Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome to something very special for EVE Echoes. Last week the developers of the game, the core team, sat down with some of the mods on the official EVE Echoes Discord and did a Dev Talks event. This is a really cool little milestone for us because it's actually showcasing that the devs are kind of reaching out to at least have these kind of conversations with us. Do I stand by my remarks that they're still going for low-hanging fruit and that they've stopped really listening to the community? Yes, but at least they're doing some outreach, and so hopefully this could change. Dev Q&As are very particular to the single dev who answers, whereas this is cloud and it is much more of a team-based response. Now there is a lot to go through here, so do brace yourself for a long video. It is pretty much a podcast, so just put it on in the background while you're doing anything. All that will be on screen otherwise is the questions and answers in written form as shared by the development team. I wanted to go through this just to talk about it because there are some really interesting parts here. Some of it we're going to go through fairly quickly, some of it we will stick into a little bit longer. Now if you do enjoy this video, please let me know, hit like on it, subscribe if you haven't already, otherwise let's jump right in. So the Dev Talks event highlight. The first question: can you share with us your team's overall philosophy when it comes to balancing the game? How do you approach the task of creating a balanced gameplay experience for players, and what factors do you consider when making balanced decisions? Cloud responded, our philosophy is that the player experience comes first. We're more interested in the gaming experience rather than only focusing on the absolute balance of stats and power, which is fair enough. I can't remember who it was, back in the days when Blizzard were actually the good guys in gaming, came out on stage and talked about balance at I think it was a game developers conference, and did a talk about balance, and he basically said that the illusion of balance is far more important than the actual balance. Therefore, you can actually have some things that are underpowered and overpowered, but as long as people enjoy using them and they're still getting used, then that's what you're aiming for. If everything's perfectly balanced and no one's having fun, that's worse than being imbalanced but people having fun. Now, he does go on here, Cloud, to say, if an imbalanced setting can bring more fun without affecting the whole, we would not impose a strict balance. But if a setting seems to give players a bad experience, we'll definitely optimise it, which is exactly that, and I do agree with that mentality. That is a good mentality to have as a game developer. And we know that there's, for all we want to say about the Echoes core team, they are good game developers with a lot of chops behind them. They've been doing this for a while. They are pretty good at what they do. Does it mean they always get it right? No, and we know that a lot of this comes from the netties on high just not allowing them the freedom to do what they want to do and rather have to do what Nettie's core says is okay to do. But anyway, Cloud says there are three major methods for balance adjustments. Number one, data-driven. We regularly analyse the actual server data to see if it meets the corresponding metrics. This should be number three, in my opinion. Check the data after. You've said you want this to be on game feel, on how the players are feeling, therefore this should be number 3 on the list, because the data is less important. You've just said that, actual balance is less important than how the game feels, so why would you put actual numbers at the top? That should be at the bottom. But hey, again, this might not be in order, we'll see, it could be reverse order. We regularly analyse the actual server data to see if it meets the corresponding metrics, which means they are looking at what is getting used by how many people and in what kind of circumstances. And data, like any form of statistics, like Winston Churchill once said, there are lies, damn lies, in statistics. You can easily misinterpret statistics, or you can bend them to fit whatever it is that you want to try and say, so you do need to be careful with data-driven, but we'll see. Design-driven. We review the previous event and discuss whether it meets its design purpose. It's interesting to note that they refer to updates as events, which is a slightly worrying sort of term to use for this. Yes, it could be a translation error, but considering these questions were given ahead of time and then responded to with due time, it's one of those situations where I feel that, no, they've chosen this word. Event suggests that whenever they add something to the game, it's not meant to be fixes, it's meant to just be adding new exciting stuff, which certainly goes with that feeling that if something's broken in the game, NetEase's response tends to be just to throw another log on the fire. 3. Player-driven. We collect feedback from the community, DM and questionnaires to know what the players think about the current game balance and make adjustments accordingly. And this is a double-edged sword. I will still bring up the point of last April's balance patch, which slowed down every single ship in the game by reducing the amount of flight velocity bonus that you got from the command skill, so frigate command, destroyer command, cruiser command. Ultimately, a lot of people complained about this and threw a massive fat wobbly on Reddit, claiming that, oh, this breaks the game and I'm not going to play anymore, I'm going to quit and all this kind of thing, and kicked up a major storm. The trouble was 90% of the people who were kicking up said storm weren't even on the actual test server playing around with it. In this case, it's a situation where those of us who were testing were like, this is amazing. I'm a small ship pilot, for crying out loud. I speed tank most things in the game. So if I'm telling you that actually the speed tanks still work absolutely fine, it's not out of a point of bias. In fact, if anything, I should be one of the ones who is most worried about speed nerfs. But it did so much good for the game, but some people complained without any actual knowledge and then go through. You can't just take player feedback. You have to process that player feedback. That's what the CSM is for in EVE Online. They take players' feedback and then they kind of go, yeah, but does that make sense? Like, this player is saying X, Y, and Z, but just because they're saying it doesn't mean it's accurate. We had people saying, oh, these flight reduction speeds are going to absolutely wreck all of the frigates and anything speed tanking in the game, when those of us actually running the tests and looking at it were like, no, it doesn't. And ultimately NetEase listened to the loud people shouting rather than the people actually collecting data. When you do things player-driven, you have to be sure to parse your data. You can't just use raw data for everything. You do have to validate your data sometimes. And ultimately that's where data-driven and design-driven does come in. I personally feel player-driven should be top of the list. If players are saying we want something, that is kind of where you should be looking to go. Then you look at, okay, they want this, does it fit with our design? And if the answer is then yes, you go, right, okay, how does that fit with the data that we've got? If they're saying that we feel this is too powerful and we're like, okay, our design says we don't want that to be too powerful, we then look at the data and go, well, actually barely anyone's using it, so is it powerful or is it just people having bad experiences or not looking at the bigger picture? You have to analyse your data. Anyway, I'm not going to stick on this one too long, we're going to move on to question 2. Can you walk us through one specific balance change that you just made to the game and explain the thought process behind it? Cloud responds, let's take the support projection implant as an example. After mastering this implant, a 5-member Typhoon or Raven class squad can make almost all ships unable to use any module. While this may seem like a brilliant tactic for attackers, it can be awful for pilots, which I do understand. There's nothing worse than playing like Dark Souls PvP and just getting stun-locked, or playing Street Fighter and just getting stun-locked. Any situation where, you know, you go to play a game, someone does something and then you're just like, oh, well, I guess I don't play now, does freaking suck. That doesn't mean ECM is a bad idea. ECM is fantastic, it just needed proper counterplay, which they have now added. While this may seem like a brilliant tactic for attackers, it can be awful for pilots. To address this issue, we've added a jamming success rate calculation based on sensor strength. When flying larger ships and with more powerful radar sensors, they're less likely to be jammed by smaller ships and vice versa. This setting optimizes the experience for pilots being attacked while giving attackers the option to choose between Zerg rush tactics or sacrificing defense for higher jamming success rate. It also provides players with more tactical options, which I'm all for. Now, at first, I was kind of against this when they first announced it because of how they announced it. I agree, absolutely, that small ships should struggle to jam a battleship, but I also believe that a battleship should struggle to jam a frigate. Like, there should be almost like the missile damage calculation there, that big ships are good at jamming big ships, small ships are good at jamming small ships, because that means you kind of have to have a fleet that is varied rather than one ship doing it all. More tactical options, and as long as that's what it actually works out at, I'm happy. I think people need those options rather than just, hey, we're just going to have it so that, you know, this one thing now has a calculation involved and there is counterplay, but still it's going to be Typhoon and Ravens that do it better. I think there does need to be that balance, and I'm all for that. And I agree, giving more tactical options, good thing, and it's nice to see ECM actually in the game. Now that ECM is on an implant, I would love to see it also added back to the Caldari ships like the Griffin and the Blackbird. Give those their ECM bonus back and shove the Guidance Disruptor back onto the Amar ships. To me, that makes so much sense. And it would be nice to have things like the Griffin that can do this. And when it comes down to people saying, oh, but then what about? It's like, well, we've got the mechanics now. So you can have an implant that can do that on any ship, and you can have a ship dedicated to doing it. So something like a Blackbird that gets bonuses to the ECM, bonuses to the implant. The implant itself doesn't do anything, but you have the new module. So the implant works with the missiles that you're firing, and then the bonuses on the Blackbird hull affect the ECM jammer module that is fitted to your ship. So you've got two different options and two different calculations going on, which makes the Blackbird very good at ECM. You get my point there, but if you don't want to fly a Blackbird, you could theoretically just strap those missiles to a Drake and go with that implant, and that would still do the job, just not necessarily as effectively, and you can kind of, or not as effectively as a Blackbird that's doing the missiles and the ECM module, if you get me. On one hand, you've just got the missiles, on the other hand, you've got the module and the missiles. To me, that would be the way to do this. Moving on. What are the key metrics and data points you use to determine whether a balance change is successful or not? Cloud responds, the metrics for ships, modules, and skills vary significantly. For instance, let's take support projection again as an example. We will analyse the selection rate, usage rate, and success rate of different tonnages to better understand its performances. And this is standard game design 101, like, this is nothing special here. Any game designer, have a conversation with any game designer who's worked on any form of live service game, and they'll tell you this is exactly what you do. When you balance something, what you then need to watch is how many people are now selecting it, how many people are using it, and how well they're doing with it. And that gives you the data to figure out whether or not it might have been overtuned or undertuned, and you can make additional tweaks. The trouble is NetEase seems to still be insistent on doing 2 big balance patches a year, and then sprinkling some very minor bits and pieces in between. I would love to see a actual, like, every month there being a proper balance patch. It doesn't need to be big. Like, it's a case of, like, oh, this thing feels slightly too powerful, so we're reducing it by 1%. And then people go, well, that's still not enough, so next month they reduce it by a further 1%, and so on until you reach a good point with it. Rather than trying to balance it by 10% all in one go, and then going, oh, well, we massively overshot, should we go back to 5%, or is it going to be closer to 7 or 2, or, you know, how do you figure that out? You don't. So smaller incremental changes work so much better than big sweeping changes, but they seem to have the basics of balance down, but just not the willpower to do it at the rate it requires to make good balance. Moving on, can you give us an example of a recent balance issue your team had to address and how long it took to identify and roll out a fix? In this case, we recently encountered an issue where sentry guns wouldn't trigger when low-sec firing during wrapping. After analysing the possible causes, we determined that this is due to warp protection. We're currently evaluating 2 solutions, one's to cancel wrap protection if firing and terminate the wrap, while the other is to disallow damage while under wrap protection. And I kind of get both of those do kind of make sense. This is the idea that when you're warping and moving away, nothing actually hits you anymore. If something is launched, you're in warp, so it's too late. It's kind of like how the servotics and that work. So I think, yeah, it kind of works that if you have it, it needs to work both ways. What you've got here is that if someone fires as they're warping away, then that wrap bubble goes around them, the game sort of protects them, they get the shot off as they're warping. We saw this with the low-sec Korax. In my opinion, though, this shouldn't be an issue. If people can time it so perfectly that they warp off and don't get hit by the gate guns, that's smart gameplay. That's players understanding the game and doing something unique with it. I don't think that should be punished, and I did a video on those low-sec gate camps. I ran a couple myself. Not many, and I did get killed in one of them. So you know what, it's one of those, it works both ways. This isn't me going, oh, I want more PvP kills. That's not who I am as a player. I'm not a big PvPer in the game at all. Sitting on a gate camp like this isn't my playstyle. I recognise it is other people's playstyles, and if they've got creative ways to do it, then so be it. Other players should be paying attention while flying through low-sec, and they're, you know, it's one of those things, you fit for it, right? You know, you learn to handle this. This is EVE. You lose ships. They die. You get over it. Anyway, that's the end of our first page of questions. We now move on to question page number 2. Zoom all the way in, scroll all the way to the top, and let's start on page 2. Are the developers confident that the server will be able to handle big fleets using drones as the primary weapon engagement tool once again, despite the anti-drone modules in place following the massive buffs to drones as part of the balance patch change? Cloud responds, we're confident in our progress. We've already implemented some combat optimizations and continuing to work on more. While the current performance is satisfactory, we strive to further improve fleet fights in future. Yeah, that's a sentence. Ultimately, I'll be honest, I don't hear that many people complaining about black screens anymore. I've been in a couple of CTAs over the last couple of months, not recently, but when I was in CTAs in the current war, I didn't get any black screen issues myself, and I've not heard many people complaining about them, so it does seem that there are improvements going on. Does that mean there are no black screens? No, I didn't say that, so get out of my comment section going, well, actually, I had a black screen just last week. I'm sure they still happen, but they don't seem as prevalent as they used to be. That can only be a good thing, right? And yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be improved. I do think that, you know, that the whole way that this drone issue was handled has been poor and confusing, but there we go. I still think that we should take drones off a load of the ships that just don't need them. Why does a stabber need a drone? Like, it does not struggle to hit a standard frigate anyway if it's set up correctly, and in a fleet it shouldn't be worrying about that anyway. That one drone on the stabber does pretty much nothing, but people are going to use it because why the hell not? At which point you're adding additional server load. Easy way to do this is just to get rid of drones on ships that do not need them. Keep them on some of the battleships for sure, but just I don't think every blasted cruiser and above needs drones on it. I don't think that, but there we go. Apparently I could be in the minority there. Could the developers provide more insight into the reasons behind giving the Rorqual a massive bonus to its extraction rate, considering that mining's already considered a relatively unprofitable profession? Goodness me, unprofitable profession in EE. So yeah, I agree with this. The Rorqual does not need to be able to extract more, for crying out loud. The more we extract... I've talked about this at length so much, but read up on induced demand. Type into Google induced demand and read how increasing the option to use something can just ultimately clog it straight back up again, because that's what we get with mining. The more that you just improve like mining speed, then the more ores are flooding into the game, and yeah. I'm not going to go down that one. We focus on its production cost, says Cloud. The Rorqual has a high production cost, but it's good value for money, honestly. The Rorqual should have huge defences and drone capabilities for its huge cost. Should it? Should it? Or should it just be really good at one particular thing? It doesn't need to be good at everything just because it's expensive. This is a major flaw in the Echoes team's understanding of EVE. It costs more, therefore it should just flat out do more. And that's not the case. That shouldn't be the case, and it's one of those controversial things. Every time I talk about like adding small ship content to the game, people say, "Oh, but Benzie, a battleship should be able to make more ISK per hour than a frigate." And I've never said about the ISK per hour. I've talked about meaningful gameplay, something that's actually challenging to do. And yeah, I do agree a battleship should earn more ISK than a frigate because a battleship costs more. But that shouldn't be your central ethos for balance, because that way you end up in a situation where the bigger things cannot be countered by smaller things because of cost analysis. When you sit there and say that, a battleship costs 20 frigates, therefore you need 20 frigates to kill a battleship, that sounds like good design on the surface, but what that means is it takes much more effort to kill a battleship than it does to kill 20 frigates. Because the point is, if you're flying a battleship, you should be able to equally have the chance of taking out 20 frigates, right? But those 20 frigates require 20 pilots and 20 players and all of this to go with it. There's additional factors there. In my opinion, pulling numbers out of my head, rather than a battleship taking 20 frigates to kill, and again, I'm just pulling numbers here, I'm not suggesting it actually takes 20 frigates to kill a battleship, but if you were to say that a battleship costs 20 times the cost of a frigate, you would need 20 of those frigates. I would suggest that if a battleship costs X amount, or, 20x in this case for the frigates, the frigate costs X, battleship costs 20x. It should therefore take, say, 10 frigates to be able to kill that battleship, because then you're factoring in the cost of the actual fleet, of getting enough people together in order to do that, and it means that battleships aren't just ridiculously powerful and better at everything than anything else. That is game balance, because you're going outside of the basic stats and going into the feel of the game and accepting that it's not just the cost of the ships, but it's also the cost of the player's time and the capability to actually launch such a fleet. You've got to understand that, okay, yeah, you guys can probably muster a fleet of 20 frigates at the drop of a hat. It's still 20 players compared to one. One player has equal footing against 20? That just feels wrong to me, but hey, there we go. Moving on. What information from player feedback helps you decide what needs to be balanced? Cloud says, we'd appreciate hearing your honest feedback and suggestions in various situations. Additionally, please do not hesitate to inform us if you come across any statistics you believe are unreasonable. Basically, feedback channels exist, they are watched. Simple as that. Like, give feedback. Give honest feedback. Give good feedback. This is kind of a big thing. People saying, I don't like this ship, it's too powerful. The hell does that mean? That is so vague to be worthless. Hi there, I think that this particular ship is too powerful because I feel that its range and the fact that it has low tracking is just utterly decimated by the fact that that never comes into play. Therefore, a situation needs to be created to balance this. Talk about what the issue is. Don't just go, this thing broken, please fix. Because you just come across like an idiot and you're wasting everyone's time, especially your own. You're spending time typing something out just for it to be ignored. Be clear, be concise, explain what the issue is and why you feel that. I was having a conversation with a guy on the official EVE Discord the other day. I won't go into details because I don't want to bring out too much of this, but he had a particular opinion that I disagreed with, and everyone else on the Discord at the time seemed to disagree with as well. And a lot of people were just going, oh my god, you're wrong, and just leaving it at that. So I stopped and I said to this guy, look, why? Why do you think that? Like, I don't want to, I'm not challenging you, I'm not being facetious, I want to actually understand what your logic is. Why do you feel this? Why is this, you know, a problem to you? What is going on here that makes you feel that way? Because that is how you get good feedback. Because when it turned around that he didn't have an answer for that and took that as personal attacks and started getting super defensive that, oh, why are you focusing and attacking me? I'm like, I'm not attacking you, I'm asking a calm question. Why do you feel the way you do? I want to understand so that I can better understand the situation, right? By the time I realised that he was just going to sit there and claim, oh, I'm being attacked, like, you know, I'm being repressed, don't you, Monty Python, for crying out loud. At that point, you just kind of give up and go, okay, well, then it's not good feedback. If you cannot back your feedback up with even feelings, let alone statistics, but if you can't back your feedback up with even feelings and emotions, then it's literally worthless. It's worth less than the ink it's printed on, and it's digital. Can you share with us what you're currently working on that users can expect to see in the live server in the very near future? And this question excites me. We're currently developing corporation training to provide additional benefits for our corporation players, despite the fact that everyone wants this at alliance scale now, but hey, that's another topic for another video. Additionally, we'll be making balance adjustments to small ships and modules. Now, I want to celebrate here, but the last time they said they were introducing small ship gameplay, it turned out to be the versatile assault carriers. Technically small ship content, I guess, but no, lightweight ships do not count as small ship content. But moving forward, we plan to introduce more PvE and PvP gameplay options, specifically designed for small ships. Yay, they're listening to that at least. We are looking to get some small ship content, some balance for small ships and modules, and some small PvE and PvP gameplay for small ships in specific. That said, I kind of say, why do we need new options? Can't we just retool the existing ones? But hey, you know, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth here. If we actually finally get freaking small ship content, you know, meaningful content. Again, I understand that, you know, flying a Tech 10 frigate shouldn't earn me as much ISK as flying a Tech 10 carrier. I get that. I play EVE Online and it's the same there, you know? Like, I can rat a C3 anomaly in a Tengu. For a C5 anomaly, I need a Marauder. And for a C6 anomaly, I need a Dreadnought. But the Dreadnought earns a couple of billion an hour, whereas the Tengu earns like 100 million an hour. It's a bit, you know, 200 million an hour. It's like a big difference, you know? I get that. I understand that that scaling should be a thing. The point is that stuff that I'm doing in the Tengu earns me good ISK, and it's fun. It's engaging. It's not just undock, lock, and shoot, and move, and unlock, and dock, and like you're a bloody Cyborg or something. I don't know, like, I almost went full Dalek there. Extent. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do a Dalek impression on camera. But yeah, the fact that we're getting PvE and PvP for small ships, nice. The fact that they want to make balance adjustments to small ships and modules, also nice. Wouldn't it be nice if we also got some of the missing small ships? We can live in hope. Ultimately, I will take this. I will take this. And this is the kind of thing that actually might bring some players back to the game. So that's a fucking win, right? That is a win. That is a huge win. Could you share some latest updates about the Yanjong? Jesus, yes! Please, thank you. We've completed ship models, and attribute designs for Yanjong. The initial setting for Yanjong is a new region with NPCs where players can explore together. Now, this is interesting. The completed ship models and modules have been in the game for a long time. Like, I've done videos using the Shanyue and Kanyue non-prototype, the actual versions of those ships, using the modules that are in-game already. They did a load of artwork. It's kind of silly for them to try and insinuate that, oh, we've been working hard on the Yanjong for 3 years. You had the Yanjong ready at launch. They've been in the game since launch, you just never made them accessible to the average player. You can pull it up on Fulmination, create all the modules, go fly the ship, and have a great time, because they are genuinely fun ships. I can't wait to fly an actual Shanyue. I really like that destroyer. It is a lot of fun. Anyway, the initial setting for Yanjong is a new region with NPCs where players can explore together. Now, this has led some people to believe that this could be what is referred to as the drone regions, the areas like Cobalt Edge, Peregrine Falls, all that kind of thing on the eastern side of the map that's currently locked off. It's on the map, but there's no way to access it because all the gates are closed. Places like Cache and Geminate have connecting gates. This is areas you can fly through in EVE Online. In EVE Online, these are the drone regions. Essentially, the Galente try to colonize this area and discover a load of drones have gone completely rogue and are forming AI hives and all this kind of thing, and it creates a massive threat that then spreads out across the rest of the empires. It's a really cool part of the EVE lore. If you do the Sisters of EVE Epic arc early on in your experiences with EVE Online, you'll get to see a lot of that as well. It's really cool. It's a cool bit of backstory. I'd be kind of sad to see it changed to Yanjong because it's a massive region of space. And that's not because it's not EVE Online. I mentioned this the other day and I had some people challenge me, oh, you just want it to be EVE Online. No, I'm happy for them to change the lore, just in ways that make sense. The Yanjong, according to EVE Echo's own lore, which is based on EVE Online's lore, it's there in both of them, go into the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and it talks about the Yanjong still being based in the Deltol region, which is on the far galactic west. So opening up the drone lands and calling that the Yanjong region makes no sense. The Yanjong are masters of graviton and warp technology. They are very much this secretive ancient race that disappeared in EVE Online, and in EVE Echoes they're kind of reverberating and reappearing. This is an alternate timeline. I don't mind that, oh, it's not the drone lands, it's the Yanjong. It just, to me, it doesn't make sense, and it causes some real big gameplay issues if they do it that way. Because right now, we've got, like, a massive coalition taking over most of the server, right? That means if you want any of the Yanjong content, you're going to need to move into the Yanjong regions in order to get it, but you're just going to have this massive coalition that moves in and basically takes it all over. So if you're not part of that, you're screwed, and that's not fun. So I'm hoping this could be more like Pochven and the Triglavian space and Abyssal Dead spaces, where it's the kind of thing that everyone can fly into from no matter where you are. I'm hoping it's not the drone regions. And making the Yanjong the EVE Echoes version of the Triglavians would make sense, because they're an ancient race that disappeared and kind of went into hiding. And being masters of graviton technology, and considering it is gravitons that literally ripped the EVE Echoes universe away from the EVE Online universe back in, what, Y106, Y116, I can never remember which one it is. According to the lore of this game, graviton waves have done this. It's the massive star exploding, the supernova, caused that rift in the two universes. So having these guys be in their own pocket that's not nullsec, that's not somewhere we can just move into and take over, I think would make it far more interesting. You could have content where you could access it from high-sec, access it from low-sec, and access it from null-sec. Making this like wormholes. Oh my god, making this a wormhole region like a Neukis that you can move into, that would also work. Like, we've already changed the Sleepers to kind of be the Triglavians, so why not change the Yanjong to be the Sleepers? That to me makes sense. I don't think it works opening just up the drone regions. I think opening the drone regions is the least effort possible to just make it happen. And I think the Yanjong deserve better than that. Personally, I could be completely wrong, and I'd like to know your thoughts and opinions in the comments on this one as well. Anyway, it brings us to the end of page 2, third and final page. I'm aware we're 28 minutes into the recording of this video. I do need to go fairly quickly on this, but we'll take as long as we need. Are there any projected changes to industry? Oh yes. The system currently does not allow anything to be profitable for players unless they have raw calls and maximum skills, which is important. People sit there and go, oh yeah, it just takes dedication. I've had a lot of people recently comment that industry just takes dedication. I don't rat, and I'm an industrialist, and I make plenty of money. It's like, yes, you are the minority. Please stop. People tell me that, oh, Benzie makes assumptions. Benzie's sitting there saying that, oh no, everyone rats. I've never said that. I said most industrialists rat. Or if I have said everyone, I mean it in that sort of colloquial everyone that's the 99%. There are always exclusions to that. Of course there are. But then coming to me and saying, well, you're wrong because I don't do that, ignores the fact that, for crying out loud, I hate doing this because it feels like I'm swinging my dick around. I am the biggest content creator in EVE Echoes, right? By a significant margin. That is a huge sense of, situation of pride for me. It also uniquely positions me within the community because I am hooked into this community like most people aren't. Like, I get that you could be an powerful industrialist in your alliance, but are you talking to thousands of players daily who are playing Echoes? across all different aspects of gameplay from all sides of the server, because I've spent 3 years doing that. And so when I make a claim, I'm not just kind of going, sucking my finger and putting it into the air to see which way the wind's blowing. It's because I've been talking to hundreds of people about this. Anyway, thank you for raising this important point, says Cloud. Our current model assumes that industry players with varying skill levels compete against each other, giving an advantage only to those at the highest level of technology and skill. Yes, it does. Your comment prompts me to reassess and improve the gameplay experience for players who do not reach maximum skills. Yes, absolutely. This is why the concept of making it so that a Bellicose 3 covert ops requires a Bellicose 2 covert ops, requires a Bellicose 1 covert ops, requires a Bellicose covert op, Bellicose to, make it all. Doing that means that the players who are only capable of maxing out cruisers still have, basic tier 6 cruisers, tier 7 cruisers, have something to do. Because a standard industrialist who's right at the top is still limited by their industry slots, which means if you want to just build a Bellicose 3 and you want to do it entirely on your own, you've got to build a Bellicose, then you've got to build a Bellicose Covert Ops, then a Covert Ops 2, then a Covert Ops 3. That's 4 industry slots in order to do that. Or you could just let someone else build the Covert Ops and then you build the Covert Ops 2 using only 1 industry slot, that kind of thing. You work as a team. This is supposed to be an MMO. You're supposed to have industry groups. There's a reason why in EVE Online there are entire corporations dedicated to industry. Not corporations where some people are industrialists, some people are, explorers, some people are PvPers, and some are PvEs. No, entire corporations where every single person in that corporation does nothing but build ships and ammo and stuff like that. And maybe has a hauler to move stuff around, but that's literally it. That's because those people work together. You know that player A is going to build all of the low-tier cruisers. Player B is then going to use those to build the, Covert Ops version. Player C will take all those Covert Ops and turn them into Covert Ops 2s, and then player D will take all the Covert Ops 2s and turn them into Covert Ops 3s. It works that way. And if you want to, this is why multi-boxing is such a thing, because then you can create multiple industrial alts and shift them between themselves. Multi-boxing, to me, is just a way to get around the fact that this is an MMO. Rather than playing with friends, you're playing on your own. Yeah. Anyway, so that system of having it so that lower tech ships are required to build higher tech ships means that not everyone is suddenly competing anymore. You get a situation where now, actually, the lower tech players have something that they are just as good at as the higher tech players. What you can also do is break things up. And this is a controversial point, and it always gets me angry comments as well, but again, I genuinely think this is a good thing. I've spoken to a lot of industrialists about it, and as usual, when people come to me with these kind of ideas, my initial response is to disprove it, find out how it's wrong. And if I can't do that, then I have to accept it's probably a good thing. And this is breaking up, say, cruiser manufacturing into Minmatar cruiser manufacturing, Galente cruiser manufacturing, Amar cruiser manufacturing, and Caldari cruiser manufacturing. Not for quite the same amount of skill points as cruiser manufacturing currently costs, but if you wanted to have all 4 of those fully maxed, it's going to be a lot more than just cruiser manufacturing is to max out. The reason for this is it allows for specialization, which means those who want to build one type of ship are going to be able to dedicate into that and get better profits from building that one type of ship, whereas the people who want to build Caldari ships, if you want to make money building... Think of a popular ship. Someone could, decide they want to specialise in building Amar battleships to, get all the Apocalypse Strikers. Then someone else decides they want to specialise in Covetors and ore ships so that they can focus on that. Those two players, the Covetor player can still build Apocalypses and the Apocalypse player can still build Covetors, but not at the same efficiency, therefore they have lower profit on those particular things. That specialisation also means you're not competing against each other. Suddenly, if you split all of the cruisers, frigates, destroyers, battlecruisers, battleships, carriers, dreadnoughts, that kind of thing, into different racial skills, you suddenly, rather than have every single cruiser manufacturer competing with every other cruiser manufacturer, suddenly you're only competing with the ones who have the same skill as you. The Caldari manufacturers are only competing with the Caldari ones, so on and so forth. I have suggested this to Cloud, hopefully we'll see something on there, and I'd love your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. Give me a scientific approach, prove how that doesn't work. Genuinely, come to me with facts and figures and tell me how that doesn't work, because I have run it through hundreds of scenarios and it works. Will you launch some anime skins in the future? We are incorporating anime elements into specific scenes, including skins and characters with an anime style. While we understand this style may not appeal to everyone, we want to experiment with it. Yay, development resources, but, utterly wasted. And look, it's not that I don't like anime. It's genuinely not that I don't like anime. Neon Genesis Evangelion, Ghost in the Shell, Full Metal Alchemist, Brotherhood. God, I'm not a huge, fan of more recent anime. It's not like I sit there with Crunchyroll or anything, but I do have plenty of anime that I love to pieces. I went on a holiday to Japan, for crying out loud. I am a little bit of a weeb, I'm not gonna lie. 9 days in Tokyo and I just lived in Akihabara. But hey, look, I like anime, but I like Eve. And they are two completely different things. Crossovers are great. They can be great, but you're kind of selling your soul for money. It's okay to like anime, but it's also okay to like it separately. If I want to watch anime, I'll watch anime. I don't need anime in my EVE Online to, accept, to celebrate that, hey, look at me, guys, I like anime. And it does kind of get me that, look, weeb culture is weeb culture. I've been called a weeb in the past, and I don't think it's necessarily an insult, but there is a certain group of people who take the I like anime as literally their entire personality. And at that point, it's kind of, Liking anime is not a personality. Liking anime does not make you niche or cool or unique. There are literally millions, possibly even billions at this point, of people across the world who enjoy anime. Liking anime doesn't make you special. All the things that make you special make you special. Don't use anime as a replacement for having an actual personality. And that's kind of what this feels like every time I see someone genuinely arguing for anime skins. It's basically that. It's, I love anime and I want everything in my life to be anime. And it's like, come on, man. Enjoy some separation. Enjoy some difference. Eve has its own massive lore, and I really think we should be exploring that a lot more than we currently are. I think there should be much more of that in-game, rather than looking to branch outwards. And look, I could be completely wrong, I'll be honest. The Doctor Who crossover, I had the exact same feeling about that in EVE Online, and it actually turned out to be pretty cool, because it was done delicately. And I think that's the issue. I don't trust NetEase to do this kind of thing delicately, because we look at games where these kind of crossovers have happened before, and they're not done delicately. And I did have a message from a guy saying, but look at the amount of money that Genshin Impact makes. And it's like, yes, because Genshin Impact is an anime game. You're not going to suddenly attract anime players to EVE Echoes just because our game has skins. If they didn't like the game before the skins, they're not going to like the game with the skins. The gameplay is still the gameplay. The core game is still the core game. You just put a different lick of paint on it. If I didn't like Dark Souls, I'm not gonna, enjoy Dark Souls, but, in anime style. If the core gameplay hasn't changed, and that's what I didn't like, then suddenly changing the paint on the front isn't gonna change it. I don't know, it's kind of like me saying I don't like eating mushrooms. Mushrooms, I don't like the taste of them, but if you paint a mushroom blue, suddenly I'll enjoy it. No, it doesn't work like that. You're not going to attract new players with this, and genuinely you risk putting out a lot of existing players with this as well. It is a dangerous ploy. I've already seen a lot of people who are like, I genuinely, if they add this, I will want them to add the ability to turn off skins, to not display skins. Because, goddamn. Anyway, is it possible to change the numbers to require less ISK and more materials? This is in regards to blueprints. Yes, in the recently released new content, the cost of ISK is relatively low and the requirements for materials are dominant. I haven't checked. Someone can let me know in the comments if that is actually the case. Certainly I'd like to see more of that, but again, increasing the material usage on blueprints, whilst it in theory is a good idea, until we reduce the infinite potential faucet, all it does is cause induced demand. You increase the amount of ores required, and it doesn't fix industry. It's widening the roads in Los Angeles is the example. It's a good thing, and certainly it needs to happen, but more important is reducing that faucet first. Because as long as that faucet is infinite, you can always just accommodate by throwing more people at the problem. And that doesn't fix industry. It just takes a few weeks to level out, if even that, because we now have Rorquals. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing, but the other thing needs to happen first. And if it had to be a case of reduce the faucet or increase the sinks, reducing the faucet is the big one. That's the big one. That's what needs to happen first. Are we going to get event PvP with some kind of tech level separation, for example divisions, so that new players can join in too? Absolutely! We'll provide more content that's beginner friendly, such as introducing a series of small ships with no restrictions on the player's tech level. This will allow new players to easily get acquainted with our gameplay. Not sure, I like the sound of that. New small ships sounds awesome, but with no restrictions on the player's tech level? That means they're either going to be ridiculously broken early on, or ridiculously broken late in the game, or ridiculously useless late in the game, right? I guess that's kind of like the prototype ships, you know, really useful at a certain level, but as soon as you pass that level, utterly pointless, which means they may as well be tech-locked. I don't know, is this going to be a scaling ship? Like you get a Rifter at Tech 2, and then when you reach Tech 3, the Rifter's stats improve? That could be cool, but it screws over industry again, doesn't it? Just get rid of the tech system. Seriously, just do it. Just do it at this point. Can we please get smart bombs and bomb launchers from bombers? Okay, first of all, smart bombs. Why do people want smart bombs? We talk a lot in EVE Echoes about counterplay being important, and smart bombs have none. Literally none. If you jump through a gate in EVE Online and there's a Macariel sitting there with a full brace of Imperial Navy smart bombs in its high slots, there is nothing you can do. You can't warp away fast enough, you can't do anything. He presses that button and you just explode. It's as simple as that. Smart bombs are, in my opinion, one of the worst things that were added to EVE Online. They are awful. You press a button and everything around you takes damage. And they take flat damage, whether you are clipped by the edge of the bubble or whether you are right next to the ship that launched it. You take the exact same amount of damage. There is no skill, no thought, it is just press the button and win. It's horrific game design, and I still do not understand why CCP have not retooled them. Bomb launchers on stealth bombers, however, absolutely amazing. So the way that these work is they are the only thing in the game where the actual facing of your ship really matters, other than things like bushes and that kind of stuff. But basically, they launch out the front of your ship in a straight line, they travel for 10 seconds, moving 3 kilometers a second, and then explode. So they travel 30 kilometers in a straight line, then explode. And the amount of damage that they deal is based on the proximity to the center of that explosion. This means if you aim it perfectly, obviously you can just align to a target if it's something stationary, launch a bomb and it'll hit it as long as you're exactly 30 kilometers away. But if a target is moving, suddenly you need to manually pilot to point ahead of the ship and launch it so that they get as close to the center as possible. If you ever played Missile Command, it's kind of like that, and it is genius game design that gives you that kind of feeling of actually having player skill be important rather than just player knowledge and character skills. And yeah, Echoes could really do with that on the stealth bombers. The stealth bombers are in such a bad place even still. Adding the bomb launchers, awesome. However, we're currently working on the development of bomb launchers and fighter jets. Oh god. With a primary focus on enhancing their ease of operation and accuracy. This includes improving the ability to command the aircraft to release bombs at precise moments. If you have any suggestions, please don't hesitate to share them with us. Carriers! He's talking about fucking carriers. Not bombs, but bombers. He's talking about a ship that can launch fighters and bombers. It's a carrier. Why? Why does NetEase have to make everything about the carriers? About the capitals? Just... Again, I've mentioned to Cloud that no, they were actually talking about stealth bombers and bomb launchers there. Please, dear God. Finally, are we going to get the missile ship lineage for frigates and destroyers? For example, the ship lineage such as Rifters or Merlin Assaults 2, or missing ship lineage. For example, the ship lineage such as Rifters or Merlin Assaults 2, are we going to have T10 versions of these ships sooner rather than later? So this is a confusing point, because in EVE Online, you have each of the 4 main empires have assault frigates, and those assault frigates are based on one of the hulls. For the Minmatar, the assault frigates are based on the Rifter. You have the Jaguar that uses missiles, you have the Wolf that uses cannons. You then have, in the Galente, you have the Enyo and the Ishkur, which are based on the Incursus. The Enyo uses railguns, and the Ishkur uses drones. In the Amar Empire, they're based on the Retribution is the one of them, the Punisher. The Punisher is the basis, that's then modified to the Retribution, which is a laser assault frigate, and the Vengeance, which uses missiles because the Carnage Kingdom's a thing. And then for Caldari, you have the Merlin, which becomes the Harpy, which uses super long-range railguns, or the Hawk, which uses missiles. Now, the reason that this is confusing in EVE Echoes is because they decided that the assault for the Minmatar was not going to be based on the Rifter hull, but on the Breacher. The upgraded Breacher is actually the Hound. But they decided to do the Breacher Assault so that they could use missiles for Minmatar. This essentially replaces the Jaguar, so you could add a Rifter Assault, which would then be the Wolf. If we look at the Caldari ships, you have the Merlin, and then the Merlin Assault, and the Merlin Assault uses railguns, kind of like the Harpy, but it has much more Hawk-feeling stats to it, because it's about the shorter ranges, whereas the Harpy's all about sniping. So you could theoretically have a Kestrel Assault, but again, now the Kestrel's upgraded technically is the Manticore, but again, Kestrel Assault, I wouldn't be against this. For the Galente, we of course have the Incursus Assault, which is equivalent to the Enyo. The Ishkur would therefore be a Tristan Assault. And then for a Mar, you would have, I don't really know, I guess you'd have Tormentor Assault, but then it's just lasers again. This is kind of the sad point about the fact that the Khan Kingdom ships are missing in Eve Echoes. We don't have a Mar ships that happen to use missiles. Missiles and armor tank, it's a unique niche. And that does actually play a really cool role. I really enjoy those ships in EVE Online. I wish they'd add them to EVE Echoes. So who knows? Maybe they could actually add the Vengeance and make it a Punisher Assault or a Tormentor Assault or something that uses missiles. That would be cool. It'd probably be a drone one. And in fairness, we could probably use another drone frigate, so I'm not complaining. Yes, we're working on it, they say. No further information than that. I'm excited that they're working on it. Are they going to just be Tech 10 versions? Yeah, probably, but if they're adding new small ship content as well, then I'm kind of okay with that. I've always said that my issue with whether or not they add Tech 10, like new Tech 10 frigates, is all very well and good, but we still need content at lower tech levels for lower tier players. So as long as we still get that, I'm kind of cool with it. Anyway, this video is now coming in at about 46 minutes long. You are all saints who have reached it this far in listening to me ramble on about this kind of stuff. I would love to know your thoughts and opinions on all of this. There's a lot of questions here to cover, a lot of different things to talk about, and I would love to know how you all feel about these changes. Dev Talks is something that the team has suggested they would like to do again. Big thanks to Kelbeck for making it happen, one of the mods on the official Discord, and thanks to Cloud for actually taking the time to answer these questions. It's cool, it's good to see this kind of stuff. More of it, please! May disagree with some of the answers, but I'm still glad that at least they're communicating. That's something, right? And genuinely, there is stuff in here that I think could bring old players back and bring new players in. So fingers crossed, but it's not the anime skins. Anyway, folks, thank you for listening right the way through to the end on this one. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!